Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. Chicago's pension debt increases by over $1 billion. What's driving that hike?
Illinois is facing its worst drought in more than a decade. The impact on local farmers.
Chicago police data shows homicides are down slightly. Our Spotlight Politics team digs into that and more.
Chicago was the greatest success I ever had.
And Dick Biondi, a Chicago radio icon, died last week at the age of 90. We revisit his 2003 Chicago Tonight appearance.
Now to some of today's top stories. Chicago police and emergency officials say they're proud of the rank-and-file officers and crew who worked long hours over the extended holiday weekend. Though interim police chief Fred Waller admits Sunday's storms may have played a role as well.
Of course, the weather being what it was for NASCAR, I'm sure that kept some people off the street who normally would be on the street, and we see what happened yesterday early in the morning. So I still think that we did a great job overall. You can't say that to the people who lost their lives, that we did a great job, but the effort was there.
And preliminary police data shows 9 people were killed between Friday evening and midnight last night during a busy holiday weekend that included the NASCAR street race and torrential rainfall. In total, 57 people were shot in 45 separate shooting incidents, including an early morning party in Englewood where 1 person was killed and 4 others injured.
Some of last night's 4th of July celebrations turned into fires because of fireworks. The Chicago Fire Department blames a group of garage fires near Midway Airport on illegal fireworks. Meanwhile, a popular but unsanctioned fireworks display happened at Winnemac Park on the north side, despite fencing and warnings against it. Fireworks are illegal in the city, but Fire Commissioner Annette Nance Holt says there's little that law enforcement can do about it.
All we can do is push out the information, educate people well ahead of the holiday. We had a press conference talking about the hazards and what can happen with fireworks. Besides property damage and loss of limbs, it's loss of life as well, and it can spread pretty rapidly.
New Mayor Brandon Johnson is putting his stamp on the Chicago Board of Education. Today he announces all 7 appointments to the school board. They include Jianan Shi, the executive director of the Progressive Pro CTU group Raise Your Hand, as board president. Also, Elizabeth Todd Breland, who is the only one reappointed from the previous administration, Mariela Estrada, Mary Fahey Hughes, Rudy Lozano, Michelle Morales, and Tanya Woods. In 2 years, the CPS board will move to a hybrid 21-member board where the mayor appoints 11 members and 10 are elected. And then 2 years after that, all 21 seats are slated for election.
Meanwhile, the newest member of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District is making history with her appointment. Precious Brady Davis has been appointed to fill the vacant seat on the 9-member Board of Commissioners after running for the office in 2022. She becomes the first trans person to serve on the board and the first appointed to a county office.
Governor J.B. Pritzker is signing off on a shipment of ambulances to aid the war effort in Ukraine. Literally, Pritzker autographed several of those ambulances that have been donated by hospitals and providers and will soon be sent to Ukraine. The group U.S. Ambulances for Ukraine was started by Peoria-based hospital executive Chris Manson and his daughter Lily. Manson says since they started March of last year, they've delivered 38 ambulances, 8 fire engines, and 5 SUVs to Ukraine. This shipment will bring the total to 51 ambulances.
Coming up in the program, how Illinois farmers are faring amid a record dry month and what the impact on consumers could be.
That's right, but first, tackling Chicago's pension debt. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago's pension woes worsened in 2022, according to the city's annual financial report. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more on the tough choices facing Mayor Brandon Johnson. Heather, so we've all known for a while city's finances have been pinched by soaring pension payments. How did they get worse in 2022?
Well, in all, the city owes $35.4 billion to its 4 pension funds. So that's for police, fire, laborers, and municipal employees. Now, that debt grew 5% in 2022, and that's almost double double the amount the debt grew in 2021, signifying that this problem is getting worse.
Okay, so the city, as you said, has 4 pension funds which pay benefits to employees as they retire. Can they cover these costs?
Well, that is literally the $35 billion question, right? Now, these funds are vastly underfunded. The worst shape is the firemen's pension fund, which is only 18% funded, which really raises into question whether they will be able to cover the costs as more people retire. And that's why this is such a big issue for the city's financial future.
18% is far from it. So former Mayor Lori Lightfoot left office claiming that, she and her administration had made real progress in righting the city's financial ship. What happened?
Well, it was a bad year in the stock market. So the city not only makes billions of dollars of contributions into its pension funds, but that money is in turn invested. And when those investments go down, the city loses money. And that's why this debt grew, even though the city is paying $1.3 billion more into its pension funds as of 2022 than it was in 2019.
Okay, so that leaves, of course, Mayor Brandon Johnson between a rock and a hard place. After promising to use the city's financial resources to invest in people rather than to pay off debt, what is his plan?
Well, that plan is very much a work in progress. He has formed a working group to examine these issues and others associated with the city's pensions. That group met for the first time on June 21st, and in the next couple of weeks, we expect that group will announce some sort of plan going forward, but this problem was not created overnight and it will not be solved overnight.
Okay, obviously a long-term problem.
Yes.
Heather Sharon, thanks so much. And of course, we will see you later on in the program for Spotlight Politics.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. Paris.
Brandon, some parts of the region saw as much as 7 inches of rain fall on this weekend, but the deluge didn't do much to break a lot of the state out of the worst drought in more than 10 years. June is expected to go down as one of the 10 driest months in the state's history. Farmers are already seeing an impact on their crops, and consumers are likely to see an impact soon as well. Joining us are Mark Tuttle, a longtime farmer from Somonauk. Tuttle is the District 1 Director for the Illinois Farm Bureau, and that district includes DeKalb, Kane, Lake, and McHenry counties. And joining us remotely is Trent Ford, state climatologist at the Illinois State Water Survey at the University of Illinois. Welcome both of you here to Chicago tonight. So, Mark Tuttle, this rainstorm this weekend did not wash out all the problems farmers are facing right now, did it?
The amount of rain Chicago got is about how much our deficit is. I mean, you guys got 7-8 inches up here, and we've had very little rain all spring, and we are 7-8 inches behind in many places.
Did the storms hit any of the other, I would assume northeast Illinois or northwest Illinois?
There was some rainfall in our area. I caught some rain, but I've talked to some other farmers in northwest Illinois recently that missed out on all of it. You get up around Rockford and go west, but I think they're getting some rain today, but we're so far behind, our subsoil's dried out.
And what is the impact on crops like corn and soybeans right now?
Well, the corn has been damaged. It's been hurt. We don't know for a while how much yet, but it's stunted. Pollination is going to be delayed. We're hoping for some more rains over the next few weeks, but the corn decides how much it's going to put an ear on back about middle of June, and it was very stressful at that time on the corn crop, and so we won't know what the pollination is or how big an ear or anything for a while yet.
All right, Mark Ford, much of the state was in severe drought status before this weekend. Has that status improved in any part of the state?
Yeah, well, the U.S. Drought Monitor will be released again tomorrow, so we'll see exactly what'll be improved. But yeah, given that some parts of the city saw, like you said, 7 to 8 inches of rain, and some wider spread 2 to 3 inch totals in parts of central and western Illinois, it's likely we'll see an improvement of maybe one category or so in some places. But we're still, no doubt, across much of the state being moderate to severe drought because, as Mark mentioned, going back to April 1st, we're in anywhere between 8 and 12-inch deficits.
And you mentioned the impact, Mark, on crops. What's that going to mean for consumers looking for their corn in the next few months?
I think the first thing they're going to see is their farmers markets here. Sweet corn should be hitting the roadside stands here any time, and I think they're really going to be delayed. I think they're going to have to hunt to find good sweet corn, and I drove by a couple fields on the way here that my neighbors have, and it really stunted. Doesn't look like it's going to produce much.
What is the broader economic impact on the agricultural sector?
Well, we're a big corn state, we're a big bean state, and we do a lot of exports out of Illinois, so this is going to affect the farmers pretty hard. It's our feed source. makes corn sweetener. It's our ethanol source. So loss of production, loss of product to sell.
All right, Trent Ford, we've been talking about drought, but how historic, in another sense, was the sheer amount of rainfall we saw, at least in the city of Chicago, on Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, honestly, we have to go back to, well, September of last year when some parts of the north side saw 6 to 7 inches of rain. And then even back to May of 2020 when some parts of the city again caught 7 to 8 inches in a 24-hour period. The latest numbers from the State Water Survey here in Champaign suggest that total that parts of Northeast Berwyn and some parts of Cicero caught, which is right around 8 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. That's a 1% chance of happening. So basically 1% chance of happening any given year, also called the 1 in 100 type of rain event. So, it's definitely an unusual event, although we should say that those types of extreme events, extreme precipitation events we've seen are increasing in their frequency. So this is something that, I cited at least one event in the last couple of years. This is something that I think Chicago and much of the state of Illinois has seen an increased frequency in.
Right, we've seen an increased frequency in these extreme rain events, but is it going to be sort of feast or famine going forward? Either severe drought as we've seen and then huge downpour as opposed to what we've traditionally seen in the past?
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good question. Hopefully this year we'll be getting the rest of this season. We'll be getting our rain totals in more reasonable amounts. 1 to 1 inch, 1 to 1.5 inch totals. But to be honest, this is something that models are really uncertain about when we project towards the future of precipitation variability, which is really what we're talking about here, where we go 90 days with very little rainfall. Add up, an 8 to 10 inch deficit, and then make up that deficit in a 24-hour period. And kind of what Mark spoke to, and then when we think about hydrology beyond agriculture, it's not really what we want. We want a more consistent rainfall regime. But like I said, projections of is that becoming more frequent? Is that something that we should expect more of into the future or more normal? Then that's really uncertain at the moment. So a lot of more research has to be done, and not just how much rainfall we're going to get over the course of a year or a month, but how that rainfall will fall in the future is an extremely important research question.
And Mark Tuttle, you were telling me earlier that you believe that the state's going to need about an inch of rain a week to make up for this deficit. Does that mean that these crops that are well shorter than they're supposed to be can recover and grow to where they need to be, or is it already too late?
For the soybeans, I think we got a lot of time yet. Soybeans make their beans in August. We get some rains, but corn, we went through an extremely long period of dryness. It's hurt the corn. It's hurt the potential yield. We're not sure yet, but I would say 25% at least. And we're going to need an inch of water a week going through pollination, or else we won't have a good crop.
Trent Ford was talking about sort of this boom and bust, feast or famine. How uncertain is it to be a farmer right now when you see either biblical style flooding or total drought?
Yeah, well, we're optimistic every spring. We go out there, we do our thing. We know, we know how to plant our crops. We came off 3 of the wettest springs in 18, 19, and 20, and we made some crops. But we bet on having a good normal growing season, and then during the year you just deal with other things like drought or flood or hail or something else that comes along.
Well, as we mentioned, there is a storm moving through some of the far western suburbs right now and coming towards Chicago, so maybe that deficit will be made up. Our thanks to Mark Tuttle and Trent Ford. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you.
Up next, will NASCAR make a return to Chicago next year? Our Spotlight Politics team on that and much more right after this.
In spite of the fact that 3 people were killed over the holiday weekend, homicides in the city are actually down, according to Chicago police data. Here with a breakdown of that and much more is our Spotlight Politics team. Tonight we've got Heather Sharon and Paris Schutz. So Heather, the numbers are out. Chicago murders are down according to data from the Chicago Police Department. What is behind this decrease?
Well, I think that nationwide we're seeing a decrease in crime sort of as people recover from the pandemic and those programs that we know stop crimes get back up and going. Now this weekend in Chicago, I don't think anybody can discount the impact that the torrential rains had on sort of keeping people away from people that they might be angry with or frustrated with, and that's where violence happens many times. And let's be honest, the violence that we saw this weekend was concentrated on the south and the west sides where violence is normally concentrated. So you did not have sort of a high profile event downtown or on the north side, which typically tends to make more headlines than, unfortunately, sort of the regular violence that Chicago suffers from.
So here's what the acting police superintendent said about possible factors for a deadly but not record-setting violent weekend.
A lot of long-term planning went into NASCAR, of course. We're always planning long-term for the 4th of July. Of course, the weather being what it was for NASCAR, I'm sure that kept some people off the street who normally would be on the street, and we see what happened yesterday.
Now, Paris, despite the 6% drop in murders, mass shootings still persist, correct?
Still persist, and you know the interim superintendent addressed that. The issue are these mass gatherings. Sometimes you saw that in Willowbrook several weeks ago, so not just the Chicago problem. But he was saying one of the things that we're trying to do is go to these sort of mass gatherings that are happening outside and try to disperse them, because this is where tensions rise sometimes as the evening hours turn into the early morning hours, and you can see some of these mass shootings. Should also mention that Chicago homicides are down, but not at the rate that some other big cities have fallen. Like New York and LA, they had a spike, just like Chicago had a spike during COVID, but it seems like they've been kind of back down to where their levels have traditionally been over the last several years. Chicago is just, inching down toward that. Chicago, obviously a very different city with different challenges than those cities, but still a long ways to go.
Heather, what is the latest, though, on the superintendent search for the Chicago Police Department? Well,
the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability is coming down to the wire. They have 9 days to get their picks for 3 finalists, Mayor Brandon Johnson. He then has 30 days to make a pick. Now, the commission has said they will hold a public meeting to announce those finalists. That meeting has not been scheduled. There has been reporting from the Tribune and Sun-Times and other organizations that they've narrowed the field down to 6 people, only one of whom does not currently work for the Chicago Police Department. We will have to see which of those, if they are the finalists, make the final cut.
We also have to see if Brandon Johnson, as mayor, is going to like any of those finalists. This is his marquee pick. This is his most important appointment here. I can't imagine that he's going to go with someone that he's not going to be comfortable with. So if he doesn't like them, he'll send them back to the drawing board. Or I don't think he would do this, but remember what Rahm Emanuel did when he didn't like the finalists. He said, let's pass an ordinance, circumvent the process for now, and put my guy, Eddie Johnson, in there.
And that
we'll see.
Maybe not so great.
Depends on who you ask about
Yes.
how that worked out, eh? But I mean, a lot of questions about how most of them have worked out, considering what we just discussed with the city's crime rate. Now, on the 4th, President Biden called for stricter gun control, like the one that Illinois has enacted in the wake of the Highland Park mass shooting, Paris. But the state's assault weapons ban winding its way through the courts. What's going on there?
There's multiple cases, and in state and federal jurisdiction, the 7th Circuit U.S. Appeals Court just heard some arguments. Whatever they decide, whatever all these courts decide, it's going to the Supreme Court in some form. Maybe they all get consolidated. The law is not supposed to go into effect until 2024. We'll see if this gets adjudicated by then. Probably not. In the interim, it's up for grabs. It doesn't seem like there'd be any federal assault weapons ban with a Republican-controlled House. So this is just one of those things that the long, winding process of the judicial process and legislating.
Yeah, the wheels, they turn slowly sometimes. Meanwhile, Mayor Brandon Johnson, a former teacher, says that he's going to be grading NASCAR's performance before making any future decisions. Didn't Mayor Lightfoot, though, Heather, who was there for the race, didn't she sign a 3-year deal?
So it is a 3-year deal with the potential for 2 more years, and we can see her there now.
There she is.
And but the issue is that the contract allows either the city or NASCAR to walk away, no questions asked, by the end of December, 6 months before the next race would take place. So that gives Mayor Johnson and potentially the city council a chance to say, you know what, it was great. We enjoyed all those great shots of the skyline on the national television, but this is not a good fit for our city. So that gives them a way out.
I would imagine, though, it also gives them some leverage if they want to try and wrest some more concessions from NASCAR to say, you know what, you need to invest more in the South and West Side neighborhoods. Although
it likely spells the death knell for the Taste of Chicago, which was postponed until Labor Day weekend this year as sort of a stopgap measure. And I think that's something that is going to be discussed on the city council.
That's so sad, because I've seen so many wonderful concerts through the years at the Taste of Chicago, Stevie Wonder, B.B. King.
And it's a tradition. Everyone loves the Taste of Chicago. So we're
sad.
almost out of time, but I want to get to this quickly. Mayor Johnson just appointed an entire slate of Chicago school board members. Paris, tell us a little bit about that.
Very progressive, only one holdover from the last administration, very CTU friendly, or you would think they'd be friendly to policies that the CTU has advocated for. Brandon Johnson was a CTU organizer. It makes a lot of sense that that's what he wants. We'll see how they deal with the things that are the priorities of the CTU with the budget realities.
And of course, we did hear from CTU in a statement on this
They were
this
very
afternoon.
positive about it.
Yes, praising those choices. All right, that's what we've got for Spotlight Politics. Heather Sharon and Paris Schatz, thanks. Up next, remembering Chicago radio legend Dick Biondi. But first, a look at the weather.
In the pantheon of Chicago disc jockeys, Dick Biondi was a superstar. He came to Chicago in 1960 to join an iconic lineup at WLS. Biondi left Chicago and came back a number of times, returning for good in the mid-1980s and staying on the air in some form or another for the better part of the next 30-plus years. Biondi died last week at the age of 90. Here he is with Bob Surratt on Chicago Tonight back in 2003, talking about a certain band from Liverpool.
You were the first disc jockey, I think, in the country to play a Beatles record, and then you met them. Tell me about that.
The VJ Records on South Michigan. That was great because Ewart Abner, you probably remember Ewart. He also was Stevie Wonder's manager for a while. But we played it, and when meeting the Beatles was really great. I saw them the first time they came to the United States. I didn't interview them, but I was in New York, and that's when they stayed at the Park Plaza, whatever the hotel was. But then Bob Eubanks brought him into Los Angeles.
At the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, at the Hollywood Bowl, and we were backstage, and we had a great lineup going. We had Bob Eubanks, Casey Kasem, Charlie O'Donnell, Emperor Hudson, and myself, and Bob.
This is after you left Chicago, you were at that station in Los Angeles, KRLA, right?
I was there first. The second time was in the... And,
so did you get to know any of the Beatles?
Yeah, well, we got to meet them and everything, and we're backstage talking, and then we all get up because it's time for them to go on. And we're standing, all of us, waiting to walk out because Eubanks was very smart. He said, we all go out and say, ladies and gentlemen, here are the Beatles. Which was fine, I loved it. So we're standing there waiting, but Dave Hall, the afternoon man, who was West Coast fifth Beatle, blah, blah, blah. He was having fun out there.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I hear this voice behind me. Now, I got to edit this. I hear this voice say, Mr. Hall, would you get off the blanking stage so we could get on with our blanking show? And I turned around, it's Paul McCartney. Flipped me out.
So you played, was it Please Please Me that you played in 1963, actually?
February of 63.
And nothing happened, right?
No, remember, in May, I got fired.
Right.
I went out to L.A., I brought the record with me, and the second or third night I'm there, I put it on the air, and I played it. I said, here's a great record by a group called the Beatles.
This is in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the phone rings off the wall, and kids say, get that crap off the air and put the Beach Boys on. A year later, it was all different.
Yes, it was.
My, how things changed. The legendary Dick Biondi on Chicago Tonight back in 2003. Personal story, my family hired Dick Biondi to DJ my mom's 70th birthday, and everybody, they were all dressed up in like sock hop gear and things like that. Dick Biondi had them dancing all night, playing, you know, Dion and the Beach Boys and the Shondells and the Supremes and things like that. And at the end of the night, he comes up to me and says, did I make your mom happy? And I said, Dick, you made us all really happy. And
I am sure
he
he
made
did.
everybody happy in his career. What a great career. What a great life to just make people happy every day, playing their favorite music and having a lot of fun. So our sympathies with his family. Rest in peace, definitely to a legend.
Absolutely. And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
And you can also get the show via podcast in the PBS video app. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10.
Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm, and proud sponsor of programming that offers advice and strategies to enhance the physical and mental well-being of fellow legal practitioners in Illinois.